Yep. Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Adam, the founder of ZAAG Supplements, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty all about the state of the supplement industry, his experience with burnout and an escape to Bali, which ultimately inspired the invention of ZAAG, how he's taken a very different approach to the rest of the supplement industry in designing ZAAG, and Rob and my experiences taking ZAAG, and stay tuned right to the end because Adam has a very exclusive Lunge and Lift listener only offer for you if you're interested in trying ZAAG. And we're obviously very biased, but we highly recommend it. So listen all the way to the end and you will be rewarded. But before we get into it, as always, a big thank you to our show sponsors, thetrainingstimulus.com. Please check out the website if you're interested in learning more about movement mechanics. wit-fitness.com. Please check out the website and use discount code LL15 to get 15% off your purchase. And Hydro, use our discount code LL20 to get 20% off. Also, don't forget to click the link in the description box below to get your 14-day free trial to Rob's Strength Formula Program, your answer to the strength and muscle building equation. Right, let's get into it. Adam, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on, mate. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here. It's good. I think we've spoken a lot about a heap of different topics. So I'm curious to see what comes through in this podcast.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well. Just quickly, could you give us a brief introduction to who you are and how you got here, please?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Adam. I founded ZAAG 2.5 years ago after experiencing burnout. When I got to Bali and frustrated about that, I started to research supplements and found gaping holes in why I thought they didn't work. And so through a process of curiosity and investigation, we got to creating what we have today, which is the product I think we're going to talk about.
Awesome. And could you just go through a little bit more detail for that backstory? Because I remember you telling me about it before, and I think a lot of people will probably relate to the situation you found yourself in when you went to Bali specifically.
Yeah, sure. So I was running a health food business in London and managing it internationally as well. I left that at the end of 2019 and I'd never taken any time out between university or after university. So I thought I'll take the luxury of having a sabbatical and go to Bali to surf. But when I got there, I realized I was totally disinterested in all of the things that I used to enjoy. Just completely fatigued, didn't really want to do anything, and I couldn't understand why that was. Fortunately, being in Bali, there's loads of great health practitioners, so I started to go and ask people if they could help or support, and somebody said to me, "You'll burn out." And I was like, nonsense, like I'm not burnt out. I didn't really believe in the thing at that point. And I've also been relatively healthy, right? I race at a national level in motorsport. I've always done quite high standard sports in different forms throughout my life. And so I kind of understood the importance of nutrition, recovery, sleep, and the basic principles of wellness. So it was even more confusing for me to be told that I was burnt out. But one person explained it very simply and said, look at the general adaptation syndrome. You probably know the first stage, which is fight or flight. Most people don't understand that the second phase, called resistance, is the most important phase. And that if you don't manage your body's ability to resist stress, you'll eventually flip into the third phase of burnout or fatigue. And in that space, your body's then trying to replace all of the changes that it made to deal with the stresses that you were handling for the previous period, right? And so that started to make a lot of sense to me because I was running 100 miles an hour doing all of those things. I was traveling, I was partying, I was going on holidays, I was racing, I was running a business, managing a team, etc., etc., etc. And then when you get to a point where your body can relax and start to decompress, it's like, thanks very much, but I've got loads of work to do now because you've been burning the candle too quickly. And so that's really where I started to be like, okay, maybe there is something to the burnout. But the protocol I was given was, I think, 12 different pills. And I'm not that type of guy. I'm not going to do it. And I know also that pills typically take up to 3 months to show an effect, largely because dosage is quite small. So they're limited in capsule size to about 1.6 gram of ingredient. And absorption rates through my investigation are also quite low. So some studies, I think it was done in vitamin C, show that absorption can be as little as 8%. So for easy working, if you've got 1.6 gram of ingredient, you might only absorb 160 milligrams.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And then to add to that, I knew I was in Bali for 3 months. So I'm like, well, I need something that works now because I want to get back to surfing and enjoying and traveling and exploring and being an adventurer so that I can come back and then pick up whatever new chapter I was going to do at the time. So I looked around at IV therapy as a solution because 100% absorption, you can get much higher doses into the body as well. You can't take the same amount orally that you can through your bloodstream. But there's loads of pain points to that and problems. So there are companies that are doing it that's great, but I just saw barriers to entry being quite high for people and it's quite costly. But then I questioned why nobody was using a liquid form to deliver vitamins, especially when we've had more and more popularity of energy gels and sachets within sports. And so I started to question whether that could be a vessel for delivery for nutrients. And with that, then I also started to question what lifestyle factors have an impact on your general state of well-being. So initially I was looking at, well, if someone is a fitness junkie or a workaholic, what's the different nutrient requirement that they need in order to support the activities that they want to do? But what I found was that there was a lot of crossover and correlation. So there were people that were plant-based fitness junkies. There were people that were really into fitness, but they were also workaholics and vice versa. And so some of the questions that came back was, well, which product do I take? And that was difficult to say and to give them a recommendation. And so ultimately what I found in that process was it's all about increasing people's ability to resist stress, which was me too, in order to prevent them from getting to that space of burnout. And ultimately that's where we are now.
Amazing. And when you got prescribed that protocol with the 12 different tablets, what deficiencies did they note? Like how did that process look? Like you were burnt out, you could feel it, you were talking to all these professionals. How did you connect the dots between I'm missing these things and that's what's led to my burnout? Are there specific compounds that your body diminishes through periods of really high stress? Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah, I mean, the typical thing that people will talk about when you've got a high adrenal load or adrenal fatigue is that you've not got enough magnesium, zinc, and amino acids in the body to help respond to what you're asking it to do. And then there's the whole world of adaptogens and nootropics that can support different systems within the body, the different wellness zones, let's say. And so it was a case of get that in. Now, the contradiction to what I said before is that I didn't necessarily believe in supplementation that much because I'd never really felt that it worked. So whilst I was a food first approach and I was keeping myself balanced with the recovery aspects that I knew how to implement, I wasn't supplementing. So I just sort of depleted all those vital stores of nutrients because they didn't work to me. But now they were showing me that they do work and that you do need them and that I should have been taking them. So it was more a case of them saying, you need a whole heap of vital nutrients that your body should have had daily. And then here's some additional products that you could start to take that are going to help you in that adaptation phase, which is essentially what this is all about, right? Adaptation to a stressor is an immune-driven response. And if you are not able to support that, your immune system is going to suffer. And so your ability to deliver your maximum genetic capacity is reduced because your body is just managing that load of stress that is on it.
I love the way you said there about obviously with the food and the supplements and being a food first approach. And I think a lot of people are very content with thinking, right, I eat a well-rounded diet, so I will include all the macros and micros that I need in my diet, but don't actually realize the additional stress that's coming through their life, that they actually need higher doses of the RDA of magnesium, the RDA of zinc and all that stuff. And it's like, they think, oh, I don't need a multivitamin. I heard their shit. You just piss out all the stuff. You don't need that. So I must be fine by having all my vegetables and my steak and so forth. But it's like, it's the same for me. It's a really easy comparison to, say, creatine. It's like, yes, you could get creatine from natural food sources, but to get the dosages that you need to actually make an impact, you don't want to eat that much steak. You don't want to eat that much, food in general to get that level of creatine. So it's so much easier just to take 1 to 2 scoops of creatine a day So, and then in this case, obviously with the ingredients that you have within ZAAG, is in like to get some of those at the levels that you to see a benefit, it's just not going to be practical. And as you said, by taking them in a capsule form, a lot of time it's just easy to forget, because you just get into like, okay, unless you've got a really good routine of like when you brush your teeth you do this or something like that, like fair enough. But for a lot of us, it's like you'll start it out and it'll just, then you'll just carry on your day, and then you'll forget, and then as you say, those levels will come down and you'll wonder why the fatigue starts to set in and so forth.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points to that, Rob, which is in the research that I started to do when I wanted to understand supplements more, is that there's essentially a bit of a paradox about supplementation in the UK specifically. So about 2/3 of adults take some form of supplement daily, but 69% of people told me they stopped taking them because they didn't like taking pills, they didn't see any benefit, and they put them in a graveyard cupboard, which meant they forgot to form a habit, right? When you extend that out, most people have got up to £1,000 worth of expired supplements in cupboards, which is crazy. But then to your other point about not getting the right nutrients from your diet, the way that we farmed over the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years or more has depleted the soil of the vital nutrients that it used to have. So for you to get the same nutrients from a single apple from the 1950s, you'd have to consume 100 apples today. So it's no longer a question of, do I need supplements? It's a question of like, which supplements in which forms at what quality can I get in order to maximize my ability to perform, right? Everything's about performance these days. If you look at the intensity of life, it's no longer that you just went to work and then you came home. Everyone's got some side hustle or project that they're doing, or they're competing for an event at a higher level than probably professional athletes would have been doing 20, 30 years ago. So the intensity is far greater now than I think it's ever been, and it probably will only get more intense.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I remember when we chatted about the Apple stuff before, Adam, and the takeaway I had from that is that we're kind of getting done from both ends, in that life is more stressful than ever and the nutrient density is lower than ever. So we're losing both ends of the scale. And like, one option is try and live a less stressful life, which not many people are that inclined to do these days, because like you say, everyone's trying to perform in whatever way, shape or form they choose. But the other side is, can we bring back that nutrient density and replace the stuff that is now no longer so prevalent in our diets? And it's just getting harder and harder to find high quality food, which I guess is probably why you landed on supplements as the way to solve the problem. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we should also mention stress for a minute, because I think people tend to only think of stress as a negative. Stress is really important. It's partly why we evolved and why we function. So there's enormous benefits to stress. When you break it down, what we're really looking at is the hidden stresses, right? Essentially the impact of living the lifestyles that we want. And in that, you guys will know also from the things that you do, it's very difficult to get people to change. Getting people to change their diet is quite difficult. They might go all in on training, but their diet would still be a bit lax. They'll still have days off from clean living. They'll still party the weekend and take junk. So it's like, okay, that's what people are designed and set up for. How else can we have this conversation, and what's the ticket into that? And for me, as I experienced, supplements can be effective, and supplements can shift your ability to perform, and let's say also enjoy, right? Like if you're performing better, you tend to have a positive correlation of enjoyment and happiness. And so it was really the starter to have that conversation. But the things I'm trying to do is talk about immunity and wellness on a much bigger level, not just supplementation, because there are many different aspects that can come into it. It's just the start of the conversation to change people's perspectives, for them to maybe take something away from this conversation or another, to be like, actually, like I could implement that. That's a really small addition to what I'm doing. So in the product and the way that we created the gel shot, I essentially wanted to remove the wellness admin of taking supplements that I experienced when I was like, I've got a pillbox now and I sound like a maraca. Do you know, like I just I didn't
like an old
want
person.
That.
Monday,
yeah, exactly. And so I thought, if I can create a situation whereby it's super easy for people to take it, and it delivers results quickly, then I've got a better chance of people consuming it for a period of time for them to shift the dial of the baseline of their nutrients, of the vital nutrient stores in their body. And that's what we're starting to see, right? I think because of the delivery system that we chose, with it being liquid, the absorption is much higher. So it can be up to 98% and much, much quicker. So that pill breakdown process that's required for you to be able to assimilate the nutrients in the small intestine can take 20 to 30 minutes. In liquids, it's already in that form. So you can absorb it in less than 4 minutes. And some studies show it's as little as 30 seconds. Then add to the fact that we're not limited by the size of the sachet. We've got 3 times as many ingredients in each sachet as a single capsule. And the absorption rate means that you can consume, I think it's 28 times more than you would from a single pill. And I think that's a large reason why people are starting to see almost immediate effects. If you're in tune with your body, we spoke about this before, you tend to see that people are reporting benefits or improvements in health metrics after just 4 days. And that extends then on average to people that are feeling it after 7 to 10 days, but definitely within a 2-week period, people are noticing the benefits of supplementation, which is essentially what I wanted to be able to do, given my experience of being in Bali and feeling frustrated that I didn't have the capacity to do more.
Do you know, you say about if you're in tune with your body, and it just made me think, because before I don't want to jump ahead too much about our feedback, but what I found was I found a very quick response, and to the point of I took the gel and I got into one of the deepest states of work that I'd had done, and I didn't want to stop, but I had to stop because I had other commitments. Now, I wouldn't say I'm hugely in tune with my body, but what I feel, and I'm curious to know, is maybe if you're so far the other end where you are just completely beaten up and like your body's in a state of just not in a good way, that having like a dosage, like a shot essentially of all these vitamins, you know, like you said, like an IV, just having that and having all these like positive adaptogens coming into my bloodstream and stuff like that, my body's like, fuck yeah, here we go, let's go. So I just wonder if the being in tune part, is it maybe I was just on the other end of the spectrum, why I felt such a, essentially I thought it was a placebo how good I felt for how, like as I said, how focused I was and how just my head was clear and everything. It was insane. I was like, this doesn't feel right, and I said to you over a message, I don't want this to be a placebo, but I felt awesome. So could that be a thing as well, that if you are just beaten up, that your body reacts quite quickly to something like this?
Yeah, 100%. And so it's interesting because you're breaking out nuances of in tune here, right? So essentially, with your profession, you are more in tune with your body than most people. But what we're really meaning is some people don't pay attention to the changes that they make. And so when you look at the middle of the bell curve, they'll take something, you'll say, how do you feel? They'll be like, yeah, I think all right, not much different. But when you start to give them prompts to say, well, what about this or what about that? They're like, actually, yes. And so what I'm saying is more in tune with the body is those people are able to give that information without being prompted. And so notice that you've tuned in and you're more productive or you're more in flow. A good example of this is people that don't necessarily train hard or they're not massively into fitness, or women, for example, perimenopausal women. We've had a great amount of feedback from those people who are talking about how it's helped improve their mood, their energy levels, it's reduced anxiety, they feel more resilient, which is obviously part of what the product was designed to do, to increase the body's ability to resist stress. And there's lots of stresses on the body if you're perimenopausal because there's so many changes that are happening. So I think it is an interesting point that you make. It's not just that. What I try to do with targeting people is go after the people that can tell me unprompted feedback, because I can then use that in order to help people that are perhaps less so by playing back statistics, information, feedback to them to say, maybe you should try this because it could help X, Y, or Z.
And so just on that, when you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about the supplement industry and how, like the UK supplement industry in particular, have you looked at the difference in the US one then? Just because I know that I think it's a lot easier to get things by in the US. Am I right in saying that? Hence why they have so many supplements?
Yeah, I think Well, first of all, there's markets that are a bit more advanced in terms of supplementation than ours, and I think the US and Australia are a bit more advanced in terms of their application or uptake of supplements. There's different regulations, and that's across medicine and like pharmaceutical medicine and supplements. But it's more about the testing. I actually think that the industry needs more stricter testing and more stricter regulation, because when you get a product like ZAAG that's delivering results quickly, people need to understand that it has been through a process so that they can feel confident that it's not got anything that it shouldn't have in it. And that's why I chose to go and do the informed support certification. So it's a seal of approval for anyone that's even not an athlete to say, this has been tested. There are some studies to show, and I can't remember when they are, so we'll try and find it and put it in the show notes, but it suggested that 70% of supplements found in the US didn't contain what they said they contained. 70%. In any other situation, that just wouldn't be acceptable. But I think that adds to the problem that we're having when we're launching a completely different philosophy of supplementation with ZAAG, in a sense that you can go on Amazon and there are thousands and thousands of different brands and products of supplements that are essentially low quality, filled with thickeners, chalks, binders that don't deliver. And so then people have this general sense of supplements don't work. Right. But they do, and their very definition of a supplement is something that's added to in order to enhance. So for me, the whole direction of the business is, if this doesn't enhance someone's performance, we shouldn't be doing it. And I'm trying to drag the industry the other way by making sure that everything we do does have some way of being quantified in its delivery.
Yeah, I love it. And just for the listeners who maybe not yet familiar with ZAAG, I think we've teased quite a lot as to these performance benefits that it offers. We're going to get into Rob and my specific experience later, but from your perspective, Adam, when you were designing it, what were the intended performance benefits that a user should feel?
Yeah. Interestingly, actually, when we designed it, it was purely about increasing the body's ability to resist stress so that you didn't get to a point where you felt fatigued or burnt out. In practice, what we're seeing is that people are reporting significant improvements in things like heart rate variability, a reduced resting heart rate, sleep quality, and recovery, which we can see in data via health monitors such as Whoop or Aura or 8 Sleep mattresses even. And that tends to be around 10 to 15% after a week. But for example, someone reported this week that just after 12 days, they saw a 42% increase in heart rate variability, whilst also seeing an 11% reduction in resting heart rate. And that was at a time where they were hitting PBs in their major lifts. And then we've also seen feedback from Olympic athletes who've been taking it where they talk about it being a game changer because it's helping them to recover more quickly despite whether they are sleeping more or their sleep quality has improved or not. And this is consistent across other people reporting feedback too, where you can actually see their data reporting poor sleep but improved recovery, or they're hitting a green streak in Whoop of being in 90% plus very quickly after taking it. So those are the major performance benefits that we're starting to see. And that actually led to a question that I asked internally, which was, but why? If we know that we designed it to increase the ability for your body to resist stress, i.e. to adapt in the general adaptation syndrome, why is that having a positive impact on heart rate variability? And so now what we're doing is exploring the nutrients that we put in more detail in order to say, well, are there secondary and tertiary benefits of consuming that? And what is the synergistic relationship of those nutrients together that's producing those results? So one example we've spoken about, I think it'd be interesting to the listeners, is alpha-GPC. It's a brilliant nootropic, so it improves your cognitive performance. And that, Rob, is probably something that is contributing to why you feel like you can be more productive and get into a state of flow with your work. But actually, when you look at it, there's evidence to show that it increases power output immediately after consumption. So if people are then finding actually it's easier for me to achieve the desired goal or objective within my training, it could be coming from something like that. And it's supported by other products, like we've got N-acetylcarnitine in there. Essentially, it does the same thing as L-carnitine, but it crosses the blood-brain barrier and increases the ability of the muscle to retain oxygen, which reduces muscle damage and therefore muscle soreness. So your recovery is getting better at the same time, which is why then people will report a reduction in rate of perceived exertion during their training. And so there are loads of interesting examples. Of one that sticks out is we had a user taking it for about 3 months. He'd seen his heart rate variability increase by 30% in that time, but then he'd started to see his heart rate variability reduce, not by much, but back down to 25%. But he asked the question of to like, have you had this experience before? What's going on? And it gets quite difficult because you need to do a whole lifestyle analysis then of what's happened. But what we were able to narrow it down to was week on week, he'd been hitting PB, 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 but he'd not adapted his lifestyle to support that. So while ZAAG was giving him the ability to push on, at a point, he needed then to rest and taper or have a deload week in order for his body to return to a normal basis for him to kind of go again. And when he did that, then his heart rate variability went back up to 30%. So I think, Rob, you mentioned at some point is like, is it going to make it, is it so good that I'm going to get to a point, I actually think it was you, who said that, like, am I going to work too hard because I find it easier in order to achieve what I want to achieve? But those are all interesting areas of exploration because the product is delivering in ways that we didn't really even expect.
Amazing. I think, yeah, it's probably a lot of people thinking, shit, what's it going to do for me now? And yeah, I think from my perspective, and I love the way you framed it about your ability to deal with stress and having these sort of unintended performance benefits. Just obviously, I'm not going to pin you down to hard scientific explanations that you haven't fully investigated yet. What are the theories there? Like, what, maybe if you explain how the ingredients help us deal with stress, then how could those similar mechanisms also unlock new levels of performance? Just throw some ideas out without having to have a hard commitment to them.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think people should go and have a look at Andy Galpin. He's doing some great work on explaining how stress and adaptation is an immune-driven response. So stress being a stimulus or creating information that your body then has to respond to. If your immune system is not able to function at capacity, you're not going to be able to adapt to that stimulus that you've created. So your training won't deliver the results that you want it to. This can be applied to all areas of life too. And so within that then, it's a case of questioning what is the body able to receive in states of stress that might be able to help accelerate that response of adaptation. And so there's a couple of ingredients in the product that are different to what you might find in the mainstream. So ashwagandha and collagen are really salient at the moment. People are very aware of the benefits of them. But like most things, there are also potential downfalls with those products. So KSM66 ashwagandha is a really good source, but if you're not getting that, then it can have a sedative effect. It's something called a steroid lactone, not to be confused with a steroid, but it has effects that you might not want. And the same with collagen. Collagen is great in terms of helping improve connective tissue repair and regeneration and has the effects on skin elasticity that we talked about. But it's quite poorly absorbed when your body's under a state of heightened stress. So we put something in called snow fungus, which is a mushroom, which is from the mushroom family, and it increases the body's ability to adapt to stress. But part of its function is that it stimulates the body's own collagen production system. So it essentially gives it a boost, as well as being a good source of vitamin D and a few other various benefits too. And we put astragalus holy basil, which is an alternative to ashwagandha, but it works better in periods of heightened stress for people. So there are things like that in there, as well as a whole heap of antioxidants in the product as well, which are trying to oxidize the effects of stress in the body.
Love it. So how did you come up with that list of ingredients? What's the process? Because you've obviously got a lot of ingredients and a lot of dose in each of those ingredients. So how did you pick the key ones and trim out the fluff that somebody else might have put into a similar formulation?
First of all, it wasn't me. I was working with great functional medicine specialists and performance nutritionists. And I mentioned earlier that I was trying to look at lifestyle factors or creating products that would deliver for people that live different lifestyles. And so initially what I'd done was created a list of ingredients that would work for someone that was plant-based, for someone that was a workaholic, for someone that was a fitness junkie, or maybe an expecting mum. Then I realized that actually there was a commonality in amongst all of it, which was stress management and an ability to resist stress. And so then I combined all these ingredients and went back to these world-leading functional medicine specialists that I was speaking to say, okay, actually now we're creating one product, which of these do we keep and which ones do we not? Because some of them have got contraindications and some of them work together. So for example, if you take vitamin D, you also need to take vitamin K to improve absorption. And it was through that process that then we started to refine it. Some of them we couldn't get in just because naturally a lot of products taste awful. And if you put it in, it really changes the flavor, which is something we can talk about as well. And through that process, then it was a case of making decisions about which ones stay and which ones don't. But we largely cover all bases because there are 29 different vitamins, nootropics, and adaptogens in the product, amino acids, antioxidants, like I mentioned too. And I think I've not really seen anything like that before. People tend to stick into one lane. So there's nootropics, there's vitamins, and there's adaptogens. But combining it was a really interesting challenge that we're still working on.
Yeah, I found that like recently with my extra workload that I've had on, and my body has been very basically my immune system has been shot to shit. And like I've got a young daughter who goes to school, and like she's coming home with like a mild cough, and then I'd get it, and I'm just like, because I sleep next to her and stuff like that, so I'm getting like this cold, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. And obviously with my work stress and life stress, everything is like newborn, there's a lot of stress going on right now. And it's just as you're talking to me and I'm hearing about obviously like how ZAAG supports like your immune system, and my training load hasn't dropped massively as well. Like obviously I train quite hard and I train quite frequently, so it's funny because it's as I'm hearing a lot of these benefits, essentially I can really see how they start to impact me. So like, why is your immunity key to performance?
I think extending what I said before, with adaptation, your ability to respond to the stimulus that you're creating is an immune-driven response. So when there's inflammation, the body then pulls in the different signals in order to repair and regenerate. If your immunity is taken up by managing other stresses in life, expenses, taxes, all of the things that we that we have to deal with, whether it be admin for your child or things to do at work, your body's not going to be able to just entirely adapt to the responses that you're wanting from it in terms of performance. So essentially, when you look at it, immunity governs both stimulus and adaptation.
Yeah, it makes sense then why since I've been taking it, how I have been, well, I don't want to keep jumping ahead, but I keep jumping ahead to essentially how I've been feeling. But it's just because that's been for me such a game changer, and just because I've legit felt the difference, and I've just been excited to kind of do this podcast just to kind of talk about that, because I've just been surprised. But yeah, it's good. So anything else, Ash, before we start jumping into other?
I think one thing that's interesting as well is what I was conscious to do is make sure that the product delivered on all of the different wellness zones as well. So if you look at traditional supplements, they tend to be need state, i.e. I'm deficient in certain things because of lifestyle choices or diets that I consume. Plant-based people know that they need to increase vitamin B12. Or it will be specific to recovery, joints, skin, hair, and nails, or something like that. What I wanted to do was look at it from an immunity perspective to say, well, it's all connected, right? If your physiology's off, your mental health might also be off, or vice versa. And so by putting those different aspects together, hopefully you can increase the total immunity that your body is wanting in order to help your performance. And so that's why we talk about brain, body, and spirit. And we talk about nootropics to benefit your cognitive performance. We talk about products that bolster the immune system so that you don't get sick. And then we also talk about how we can put things in there that increases your metabolism so that you've got the energy to deliver the things that you want to do. So you even find things like maca in the product, which is a great source of energy. That's
brilliant. Thank you, Adam. So one analogy you gave to us before we started recording, or one way of describing it, was if you're using, it's almost like you're using up your stress budget. So if your life stresses are using 30% of your stress capacity, you'd only have 70% of your adaptation budget left for the things that you really care about. And it's that nice analogy of, you're, instead of more gas, you're actually just taking the brakes off a little bit. You're stopping the things that are slowing, or dealing with the things that are slowing you down, rather than trying to find things that push you forwards. And I think that stress tolerance mindset or frame really helps make sense of what's going on in your body, because we are in quite high stress environments, particularly if you live in a city like London. So whatever we can do to nullify some of the unwanted stresses that we don't really have a choice but to deal with does just free up some capacity to redivert to things that we're really interested in. So yeah, I think that made it
absolutely
me, for sure.
Absolutely, and I think that goes some way to explaining why people are noticing benefits, right? If the product is working to remove those expenses on your life that are taking away from your potential, and let's say it is 30%, you're only actually delivering 70% of your capacity. So if we can increase that to 80%, naturally you're going to get performance gains. And that's not just all about fitness, but that's in work, in relationships, in your family, in the things that you want to go and enjoy, right? And that goes back to the core of what I was trying to do, is like, how do I prevent people from being in the situation that I was in, where maybe I had too many invisible taxes on my body that meant that my capacity to enjoy was reduced to 30%. So I was living very suboptimally in that period when I should have been the total opposite.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. So let's cut to it. So Rob and I have been trying it out for a number of weeks now, and when I started taking it, I remember getting in touch with you, basically saying that I was having a great time with it. And, basically, let's talk, because we want to get you on and hear more about it and get to grips with it. So do you want to kick off, Rob, with your experience, and then I'll go through mine as to what you've noticed since taking ZAAG?
Yeah, well, for me, is one thing I really appreciated was when I very first took it, you voice noted me afterwards, and that was massive, because I asked Liam from PH Nutrition, obviously a massive show guest of ours that has been on multiple times, and I spoke to Ash as that, how do you take it, and stuff like that. So I tried to get some feedback, but then so I took it based on kind of what they had told me, but then you took the time to actually message me back and kind of give me some more detail, which I really did appreciate, because then for me, the actual personal application of the product was then, okay, I understood how it could potentially benefit me more than just quite generically taking it, say, how Ash takes it, or how, say, Liam takes it. And for me, I found, beyond the example which I keep giving of like from taking it the first time to being able to work incredibly deep and like just very good, I found that my need for caffeine reduced massively, and anyone that knows me knows how very caffeinated I am and how much I can take a hell of a lot of caffeine as well. And so I noticed I was needing a lot less coffees, and especially going later into the day. I was then taking it after training in the afternoon when I had to train in the afternoon, and I was then feeling better going into, say, evening classes and so forth, because I felt I was a bit more like, not relaxed, but I just felt in a better headspace. I didn't feel so drained. And then when I was taking it in, so taking the double sachet, say once in the morning and then once in the afternoon, I just had this just my sleep when I got home was of high quality. And what I mean by that is because I only wear a Garmin to track now. I don't use my Whoop anymore. And but my dreams that I were having were quite, I could remember them a lot more. So I was having deep sleep and having dreams which often I don't remember, or have dreams that I don't remember. So it's it really sounds like I'm like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, and I really don't want to come across like that. But I think for my life right now, for how stressful it is, and for working 70+ hours a week, 2 kids, like training and all that stuff, like I really felt the benefit from it. And I can't say anything better, more about it. Even the taste I've got to like.
I think I should answer to that a little bit as well, because the 2 sachets point is an important one for the guest as well, right? Most supplement research is done on the average weight human. So for a man, it's about 75 kilos. And I think, Rob, you said you're about 100 kilos. So obviously with higher body weight or muscle mass or intensity, your body's going to demand a higher amount of nutrients. So what we're saying is that if people are over 90 kilos or training particularly hard, then you might want to take 2 sachets. It might be daily. It might just be on the days that you have a very intense day, and then you would split them maybe 5 or 6 hours apart. So that's one thing. I think then the other thing is the caffeine is a really interesting one as well. So when you look at what's happening in your body when you take caffeine, caffeine's got molecules in it that look like adenosine, which is essentially what regulates your circadian rhythm. And so it impacts the body's ability to operate in the way that it normally would do. So if you take a coffee in the morning first thing, your body is already out of whack, which is why you then tend to get this crash mid-afternoon. So by taking supplements that increase your ability to do what you want to do, give you energy, and you become less reliant on coffee, you've got less caffeine in the body, which is impacting your adenosine receptors and circadian rhythm less, which therefore means that you get to an evening point and you're ready to go to sleep, which is having obviously compounded benefits with the nutrients that are in it too. So I think there's some great work. Andrew Huberman obviously is everywhere at the moment. It's quite easy to find, but if you go and look at what he's talking about with regards to caffeine, adenosine, and your circadian rhythm, you'll find some really interesting points to be able to adopt into your own lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's massive. And I love coffee, but I'm still of the notion that there is no free lunch. And if caffeine gives you that boost, there's a price to pay for it somewhere. And yeah, I think we've talked about it a few times on the podcast. I won't go into too much detail, but anything that can reduce your dependency on caffeine is probably a good thing. If you're finding energy from a non-stimulant source, then yeah, I think it's only a good thing. And yeah, to get into my experiences now, very similar, I would say, in that almost immediately when I started taking it, I think actually my first day taking it, I had one of my most productive mornings on record. Just in a situation no different to any other work day, I was just able to completely get in the zone, and it just felt like my brain was firing on all cylinders. I was coming up with some great ideas and solving problems kind of without stewing on them for too long. And probably the biggest change I noticed was in my afternoons, because I would typically get a bit of a slump, nothing major, but especially if I trained, I would then take a little bit of time to come back down to earth, to then get my head back into a space where I could think, and I just breeze through that. Basically, it's almost just like I never changed state. I was much more steady and consistent with my energy levels, and that would last into the evenings. It's almost like I could work as much as I wanted to, whereas previously I would be limited by my concentration. At some point I would start to flag, and after talking to Rob about it, I did do a couple of double days as well. If I was training twice, like if I was doing jiu-jitsu in the morning, gym in the evening, or paddle or something like that, I would do 2, and definitely felt like if I did a gym session in the afternoon, normally if I trained in the morning as well, it would be a bit of a struggle to squeeze out the extra reps, let's put it like that. Whereas I just felt like I could push a little bit harder. It was like the energy was, what would be a good analogy? It's almost like an electric car versus a small engine petrol car. Like the energy was just there on tap, ready to go, versus if I was a little bit run down, when you're just like struggling to find those last few reps that you would definitely easily get on a good day. So yeah, I'm definitely waxing lyrical here, but I think I would say I am pretty body aware. I do notice the day-to-day fluctuations, and because most things are relatively consistent in a work week, I definitely noticed it, and that's why I wanted to hear more about it from you and share the benefits with the listeners as well, because I think I haven't endorsed a supplement as much as I'm endorsing this, I would say, in my long career in taking supplements. So yeah, it's high praise. Well, I think it's well deserved.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think for me, everything's got to be about the product in supplements, right? Because everyone's had experiences where they're like, I'm taking it, but I don't really know. So it has to deliver. And it's great to hear that feedback. I think from my personal experience of taking it for a longer period of time, from when we started trialing it to having gaps where I didn't take it purposely to see what the impact was me, I've also shifted when I take it. So I now love to take it pre-workout. I take it about 30 minutes beforehand because I definitely notice a boost in my ability to perform my session whilst doing that. And it gets to the point where if there's a change in my routine and for whatever reason I haven't got a sachet, there's that real moment beforehand where I'm like, oh, damn it, like I haven't got my ZAAG, which is great. And I think it leads on to that point that Rob made before about flavor as well, which is it's not a gummy bear, it's not sweet, but it's also not awful like some things that you might take in health. And what I wanted to do was create a sense or a trigger that you've just taken something that either helps you get into that state or reminds you that you're taking something that's good for you, that will create an ability for you to form a habit, which is what we talked about at the beginning. People struggle to do with pills because there's no real experience apart from a poor one that you don't like swallowing so many pills in the morning when you're supposed to take them. So that's why we've gone down this sort of like sour cherry route. Largely, you're limited to either going down the sour route or an earthy route to try and mask the natural flavors that are of the nutrients. Otherwise, you have to put loads of artificial ingredients in there to mask flavors and to prevent that flavor from coming through, which I didn't want to do. So actually, if you look at the product, there's nothing in there that's not functioning as an intended purpose for you. We even use citrus fiber to thicken it rather than a thickening agent because it has a fibrous benefit to it and supports the gut as well as absorption. There's ginger, fennel, and cardamom in there to help with flavor, but also they're great in terms of helping people's digestion. So there's layers and layers and layers of thought that have gone into the formulation, not just from what are the nutrients that people need in order to feel better, but also like how can your body receive it and what can we do differently to what's been done before.
Yeah, something else you've done differently that I wanted to ask about was prescribe duration, in that you sell a 2-week trial pack or you do a 6-month pack as well. Could you tell us a bit more about your thinking behind those decisions?
Yeah, definitely. So the 6-month piece is a really interesting one. A lot of that came from the fact that people said that they struggled to measure the effectiveness of supplementation because they didn't have a clear start and end point. That was typically because they didn't form a habit, and so they fell off and they didn't really realize when they fell off. But by giving people a defined time frame, they're able to say whether they do or don't feel better in that. Obviously, it's a lot for someone to jump in to do 6 months straight away of a product that they've not tested before. So we then give people a 2-week trial pack that they can buy and see those benefits within that period. There's also a lot of research that I did myself, but also psychologists have done over decades around the amount of time that it takes for someone to complete the change that they're looking for. Typically, it's between 2 and 8 months. Or so was identified in some research first done in the 60s called the social readjustment scale, where they looked at thousands of people going through change and how long it took. But it can take up to 5 years if it's a real significant change, maybe the loss of a partner or the death of someone in your family or whatever it might be. When I took that information and I played it back to people and said, okay, if you're going to commit to something to see a desired change, how long would you likely be able to commit for? Would it be 3 months? Would it be 6 months, 9, 12? And most people came back and said 6 months. Beyond that was a bit too difficult for people to commit to right now. But interestingly, that also is about the same amount of time that it takes for someone to transition into a new job and complete probation period, train for a marathon, settle into a relationship. It's the amount of time that it takes for someone to move house and feel established. Maybe it's the amount of time that it takes for people to feel like they know what they're doing when they have their first child. So there's a congregation around 6 months where it feels like a very manageable time frame. And so by doing that, obviously we alleviate those challenges that people had. but also from a business perspective, it's really interesting because then when they come off, you've got a period of time where they can understand the natural baseline of where they're at then versus when they started. And they then start to understand when they need the product again. So we tend to see that people, about 2 weeks after the 6-month block, they're starting to feel maybe changes. 3 to 4 weeks, they're like, okay, I'm not on ZAAG now. Depending on how people's lifestyles have changed, they might be able to extend that for a period of time. And I'd actually prefer that. Like if people have managed to change practices in their regime, that means that they're not as stressed and they're able to cope better, then great. But if not, then they're coming back. From a nutrition perspective, it's actually good to give your body a break from some of the herbs and adaptogens that are in it too. So there's a lot of thinking behind the program setup that we created of here's a 6-month program. In the future, what I would like to do is to bring out other products very similar to ZAAG that either gap fill for people or they start to focus on other areas of change that people might require. So one of the questions is, well, what can we do once people finish that 6-month period in order to just keep them topped up? Is there a way that we can create something that's a bit of a hybrid? Is there a slightly different product that we can transition them onto, which will build on what's been happening in their body whilst they've been taking ZAAG to give them an increased benefit or to cleanse their body or whatever it might be at that time? So we can start to give a bit more of a personalized protocol based on what people are going for. I say that in a way that's different to how personalized nutrition is, because I think that there are still, from my perspective, challenges with personalized nutrition, as well as there being challenges from a business perspective, because most people bring more cost than margin from a personalized nutrition perspective because of all the tests that need to be done. And then the delivery system, the recommendation is, here's a series of pills that you need to take, which goes back to the same problem, right? So it's like, okay, great, I understand that what I need is this, but the delivery system isn't working for me. What I think is more interesting is how do we start to understand the lifestyle factors that people are living by and therefore create more specific interventions with the supplement that we have in order to say, well, Rob, you probably should take 2 a day and you should take 1 at 10 a.m. and you should take 1 at 3 p.m. Ash, you probably should take yours at 5 p.m. because your training is at 6 p.m. or whatever it might be. But if we can start to understand how that changes over the course of a year, maybe that changes for you too, right? Maybe in the summer, you increase your intensity because you're out, you're doing more, you're experiencing more. We live in a world where the light really impacts how we live. So in the winter, I would guess most people's step count is lower than it is in the summer just because they're out doing more. So how do we play with these factors that are affecting your ability to perform?
When I think about ZAAG and like the way I can kind of like what I've been able to pinpoint it to is if you remember that film Limitless, like when he takes that pill and then you just everything around you just like woof. That's what I imagine if you had a legit supplement. Just with that, and I know the individualized side of it is a massive challenge, but if you had any recommendations for like the listeners to like, as in like for a certain lifestyle or something like that, when like what would be the best place to start when taking ZAAG, for instance? Because obviously we've got a variety of listeners here where some of them train hard, some of them train not so hard, and some of them don't train at all, say. But what would you recommend people kind of start? Because I presume most people have quite stressful lives. What would be the best place to start?
Just before you get into that, all of our listeners should be training. I think if you're not
be.
training and you're listening to this, go and do some training and then tune back in.
I wanted to keep this quite broad, so to make sure that we do kind of cover everyone, because I appreciate everyone deals with stress in some way or another. So that's why I know training isn't the only stress. So that's why I probably should have worded it better. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting question because on the one hand, I designed it so that people can adopt it into their lifestyle however they see fit, right? I'm not trying to add any complexity in. It's just a case of we'll take this when it suits, which is why some people take it morning, some people take it pre-workout. Some people, we've got some CrossFit Games athletes that take it after the end of their day because it helps to bring the system down after high intensity training. There's no stimulants in it, so it's not going to affect how you sleep. So that flexibility means that really it's up to the person, the individual, to take it when they want. However, I also did a lot of research around, well, when do people go through periods of change? And that's a really interesting point to start. Like if you're starting a new training block, if you're making a specific change in your life, that's also a really good point to change. Interestingly, as a side note, those changes tend to congregate around the end of a decade. So if you put a circle around 28 to 32 as an age, or 38 to 42, statistically, more people experience change at those ages than at any other age. Now, the only thing that we've been able to identify is, one is the fact that it's sort of like a reevaluation age where you start to say, what do I want to do in my 30s that I didn't do in my 20s, or what do I want to do more of, or where do I want to be? But then also there's societal pressure in some ways, in shapes or forms, because there's articles that you see of 30 things to do before you're 30, or there's Forbes 30 under 30 list, or for women, they might be feeling that their biological clock is ticking and they are getting pressure from family members or friends, or maybe not. So it all congregates around this end of a decade. So if people are if they find themselves in that situation where they're about to start a new job, they're in a new relationship, they've moved house, they are at a different gym facility, etc., that's also a great time, because there's a lot of additional hidden or invisible stresses on the body, which may be reducing that genetic capacity that you have to deliver what you are trying to achieve within your training goals or your athletic performances or whatever it might be.
Brilliant. Adam, we're up on time, so we want to give you your day back, but I'm sure a lot of listeners are curious to hear more. What's the place you should send them to?
Yeah, head to either zaagsupplements.com or at ZAAG Supplements on all social media channels, and they'll be able to find us there.
Awesome. We may have to get you back on for a part 2, because there's a few other things we want to deep dive into. But yeah, like I said, we're up on time, so we want to let you get back on with your busy day. But thank you so much for your time. We've really enjoyed the chat. And for the listeners, there will be something in the description box below that's going to be well worth your time to check out. So yeah, have a look down there.
Yeah, mate. I just want to echo what Ash said as well, and like I just want to thank you for the supplement, mate. There's one hell of a supplement you created there, and I'm very happy to endorse such something which I've personally felt massive change from and benefit. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's been brilliant. I've enjoyed it. I hope the listeners get a lot out of it, and that they can start to take some of it into their own practices.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Really interesting to dive into all that, because I just sound like such a groupie, but I really do back this product, and I've been really enjoying using it. And as we hinted to in the podcast episode, Adam has very generously offered an offer you won't find anywhere else on the first 25 listeners who take full advantage of this offer. You'll get 50% off of a 2-week trial pack, because he's so sure you'll feel the benefit after those 2 weeks. So act fast and use the code DISCLIFT50. That's DISCLIFT50. And if you go to ZAAGsupplements.com, that's ZAAG supplements.com. If you're too slow and you missed the boat on the first 25, you can still get 20% off going forward using our discount code DISCLIFT20. That's DISCLIFT20. But as always, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you do get yourself some ZAAG, don't forget to tag us on Instagram at lunge.lift. Tag us, show us, and tell us how you're finding it. And we just want to prove that it's not just this one-sided conversation here, because we want you guys to feel the benefits too. So, as always, thank you very much for tuning in each week. We really do appreciate you each and every single week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.